I have had the honor and the privilege of being coached and working for some of the toughest, most demanding, most competitive and mentally tough, what I call ball busters, both men and women in my life. First of all, as a young athlete, I had some over-the-top, great and demanding teachers and coaches. And as an adult businessman, husband and father, I've had some incredible, demanding teachers and mentors in my life. But one of the ones that really comes to the top of the list is a man named Dan Hurley. And Mr. Hurley, to this day, I'm 53 years old and I still call him Mr. Hurley. And Mr. Hurley came into my life when I was in university and I was coaching. I was the assistant coach of the Junior A hockey team in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. And when most kids my age, I was around 22, maybe 23 years old. Most of my friends were working at Wendy's or Subway or the local pub bartending. I was the assistant coach for the Junior A team. My goal in life was to coach in the NHL and the National Hockey League. And my plan B was a university education to become a phys ed teacher. So if I wasn't going to be in an arena, I was going to be in a gymnasium with kids coaching phys ed. So that was my plan A, NHL, plan B, phys ed teacher. So I was on that path in my early 20s when I met Dan Hurley. And Dan hired me that summer to be his assistant coach. He had a notorious Junior A program, the Sudbury Cubs, which was known for one thing and one thing only: winning championships. He had multiple championship teams in the last decade before I arrived. The man wore 5 championship rings on one hand. I'm not kidding. He had 5 championship rings, including his thumb, on his left hand, and he had a couple of championship rings on his right hand. And the man had the hardest iron grip handshake that I've ever experienced in my life. I've shaken Tony Robbins' hand. I've shaken George Foreman's hand. I've shaken Mike Ditka's hand. I've shaken Cal Ripken's hand. Nobody even close to the great Dan Hurley. Every time he would put out his hand to shake it after our team would win a game or Mr. Hurley was pleased with something, I would cringe. But man, did he teach me what a real handshake was all about. Man, as much as he crushed your hand, it still made you feel like, man, I accomplished something. When you could please Dan Hurley, you knew you had really accomplished something. So Dan hired me as the assistant coach, and to make a short story long, I went to school there. I was the assistant coach until after Christmas. And when I returned from Christmas break, I came home for a couple weeks. There was a break in the schedule. And when I returned after Christmas for the second half of the hockey season, they fired the head coach, a gentleman by the name of Bob Sullivan. He played a little bit in the National Hockey League, great guy. And it was his full-time job. They were paying him $40,000. He was a man in his probably early 40s. It was his job to coach the team. I was just part-time. Mr. Hurley was paying for my tuition and for my books, and he was helping me with my rent. But I was a part-time assistant coach. and it was great because he paid for my education. But when they announced the firing, I was like, oh boy, who's the new head coach? I mean, this changes everything, because Bob and I got along very well. He gave me a lot of responsibility as a young coach. He would let me run the practices. He would let me organize and conduct the power plays, the penalty killing. It was a perfect scenario for a young coach. He had a lot of trust in me, and he was a fantastic guy. So when he was fired in early January, I thought to myself, man, okay, we got a new coach coming in. I'm gonna have to adjust on the fly. Am I part of the program? So the first thing, Mr. Hurley, I remember he called me at home over the Christmas vacation, and he said, Michael, it's no problem. He said, your job is safe. You'll be your assistant position is safe, and there's not going to be any changes in terms of that. And we'll see you back here in about 1 week's time. So all that stuff, good morning, all that stuff was put to rest. So I returned in about 5 or 6 days, and I get this phone call. This is back in the day before texting. And I get this phone call to come see Mr. Hurley. And Dan Hurley was a nickel miner. He owns Hurley Mining. And yeah, he digs nickel out of the ground every day. Think about that for a second. He was the most impressive person I had ever been around to that point in my life. He would wear a suit, a jacket, he'd wear a green tie, he'd wear a white dress shirt, and he would wear dress pants. So he was totally dressed from top to bottom, and with work boots every day. So here's a guy who's wearing a suit and tie, often a green suit and tie, and he always wore Greb work boots. Like it was blue collar meets white collar. And every day his hundreds of employees would dig nickel out of the ground and sell it worldwide. Hard, incredibly hard. And he was so proud, right? He's like, my dad dug nickel out of the ground. My grandfather dug nickel out of the ground. And my son will dig nickel out of the ground. Like a proud nickel miner. So he calls me up, which he rarely did, and he asked me to come out to the construction site, to the mine. So I don't think I'd ever been out there since the day he hired me. So I get in my vehicle and I'm like, oh shit, Mr. Hurley's summoned me to his trailer at the nickel mine. This can't be good. Dan Hurley doesn't invite you for good news. So I go out to Hurley Mining, and it's just outside the city, and it's just massive, right? The hole in the ground is like, to me, it was the Grand Canyon. Literally the Grand Canyon. The trucks are going down in a circular fashion. They're like little Tonka trucks at the bottom. And it's just, wow, everybody walking around with hard hats. So his office is this trailer on site, one of those white trailers, right? And I walk up the steps, I knock on the door, I go in, and here he's got this big ass oak desk in the office at the back in the trailer, and it's just massive, right? And all he's got on the wall are championship team photos. Like this championship, he's got like 11 photos up there. He's got trophies. All he's got is winning in his office. And work boots in the corner. So he's sitting behind the desk. Hurley's about 5'7". He's about 190 pounds of pure rock hard muscle. So he's short and stocky as hell. And he has those massive nickel mining hands with the championship rings. And he's sitting behind the desk, and he tells me to come in. He always smoked those Colts, those little cigars, those little black cigars. So he's got the suit on, he's got the work boots on, he's got the Colts cigars. And he tells me to come in and sit down, and I'm really anxious. I'm like, what the fuck does he want with me? So I sit down and he goes, Michael, we've made a change, as you know. We've made a change with Bob, he's out. And he said, you're in. And I was like, I'm in where? And he said, you're the new head coach. You're the new head coach. The general manager is going to be so-and-so. You're the new head coach. You're going to take us the rest of the way. You're the leader. I've appointed you the head coach. And I was like, but Mr. Hurley, I'm a full-time university student. I mean, I don't have time to be the head coach. I'm not qualified to be the head coach. And then he interrupted me. He said, decisions made. Decisions made. I'll pay you $30,000 for the remainder of the season, which was a lot of money in those days for 4 months' work. I'll pay you $30,000 for the rest of the season. Decisions made. And he stood up and he shook my hand. So he didn't ask me whether I wanted the job. He just told me that I had the job. And he could see that I was still a little bit unsure. And he said, you want to coach the National Hockey League someday? He said, I hear you want to coach the National Hockey League someday. I said, I do. He said, let's just not worry about that and worry about practice today. He says, let's worry about practice today. So I went home to my apartment and I was like in shock. I'm the new head coach of the Sudbury Cubs Junior A team, a team that I studied from afar like 2-3 years ago when I was coaching minor hockey. And I'm making $30,000 for the next 4 months. He didn't give a shit about school or any of that stuff. He says, you want to coach the NHL? This is a path. This is another step on the path. This is another step on the path. And I never attended another class until I wrote my finals that year and graduated. I actually graduated that year. That was my 5th year in university. I ended up with 2 degrees, but I literally never attended a single class because I was putting in easily 50, 60, 70 hours a week coaching that team. I would watch 3 hours of video a day. I would prep for practice a couple of hours, individual meetings with players, power play, penalty killing. I mean, this was my opportunity, right? He had put his trust in me. But the thing about Dan Hurley, and I saw it when I was an assistant, is what comes with that job is standards beyond belief. I think the easiest way I could compare it, the simplest way I could compare it is after reading Jimmy Johnson's book about working with Jerry Jones in Dallas, where winning is expected, but you're always dealing with the owner. I think that's the perfect explanation. I worked for the Jerry Jones of junior hockey, Dan Hurley. But I would say that Hurley is tougher than Jerry Jones. Nickel miner, tough. Northern Canada, tough. And it was funny because he used to say to me, Mr. Hurley would never go in the locker room, right? He'd always be on the bus. He'd always be at the games. He'd always be up in the coach's office. He was a hands-on owner like Jerry Jones. But he would never go in the locker room and address the team, which I thought was kind of funny because he was such an alpha male. Why not talk to the team if you're going to do all these other things, right? And he said to me, he pulls me aside one day and he's got the little cigar and he goes, Michael, the reason I never talk to the players, he goes, shit runs downhill. Shit runs downhill, son. And I was like, okay. He says, all I have to do is talk to you. And he said, shit runs downhill. He goes, whatever I tell you will end up in that locker room anyway. He goes, and I never forgot that teaching, that as the king, whether it's in your family or whether you're the CEO of your company or whether you're the leader of your, whatever it is, shit runs downhill. And he didn't have to be in there micromanaging or pushing his weight around or trying to show off his owner. He just talked to the coach. And if he was upset with something, he would tell me, which would then upset me, and then I would talk to the players about it. Absolutely true. shit runs downhill. He would give me trouble. He would give me a hard time for the team not playing hard. He would give me a hard time for undisciplined play. He would challenge me personally. And then I would in turn turn around and improve and demand more from myself and end up challenging the players. So shit does run downhill, and that's something I learned from the great Dan Hurley. I also learned what sick to your stomach after losing meant. That's a cliche to most people. They read a book and Jimmy Johnson says, he said, when he took over Dallas and they're 1-15, the players would just laugh off of a loss. It didn't make any difference. Losing was part of the culture, right? Losers aren't winners. And he said when he had those championship teams with Emmett and with Michael and with all the great back-to-back Dallas Cowboy champions, he said, I filled the locker room with guys that were sick to their stomach if we lost. They simply couldn't live with losing. They didn't like to win. We all like to win. So Dan Hurley wasn't a guy who just liked to win. Like, he loved to win. But he simply could not live with losing. And I learned that from him. I learned that from Dan Hurley. I owe my competitive nature at the next level. My mom and dad taught me how to win. I had mentors that taught me how to win. But Dan Hurley taught me how to live it. He taught me how to take losing personally. He taught me how to take losing personally, whether it was in my personal life or in my business life or in my coaching life or my fitness or my health or my relationships or my reputation. He taught me to take losing personally, to take it personally and to use that as fuel to drive yourself to next levels. I didn't have to hear that Michael Jordan does that. I didn't have to hear that Kobe Bryant does that. I met Dan Hurley and worked for him. That guy was fuel. That guy was gasoline. He taught me what being sick to your stomach really meant. He made losing so dark. He made losing so ugly. He made losing so painful that nobody, including the coaches and the players, wanted anything to do with coming up short. We didn't want to disappoint the guy. Like, you love him, you hate him, you respect him, you despise him. But man, he taught me what sick to my stomach is. Like I used to say, I don't like losing and I can't live with losing. Dan Hurley taught me what darkness looks like in terms of losing. And it made me the coach that I am. It made me the father I am. It made me the businessman I am. It was something like, I'll give you an example. So, winning is the expectation when you coach the Sudbury Cubs. It was like Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones when they were back-to-back Super Bowl champions. There was the standards were next level, right? Winning was not just wanted, it was expected. High standards were expected. Practice standards were expected. Being number one was expected. So that filtered all through the organization. Hurley did everything. We stayed at the best hotels. We took the best coaches, the buses. We ate the best food. We had the best jerseys. We had the best equipment. Man, we had the best players. And then championships were expected. Championship effort, he used to call it. Championship mental toughness. Championship desire. Championship fitness love. Championship just down the road. Championship level. And championship work ethic. And I remember one night, it was late in February, the dog days of the season. It's like minus 30 out. And we lose this game in, I forget where it was, up in Northern Ontario. It was a 6-hour bus ride. And, we just don't show up and play well. We just didn't have any jump that night. And we lose 6-5 to a third or fourth place team. Should have won the game, but we lose 6-5. Nobody plays well. I don't think I coached especially well. We just didn't have any jump or energy. And of course, Mr. Hurley's on the road trip that weekend, right? He's on the bus. We on the road trips every second weekend we'd be on the road because we're student athletes. There's no road games during the week. It's all weekends. So he'd be on the bus for the weekend, staying at the hotels, all that kind of stuff. So we start the road trip out with this clunker. We start the road trip out with this 6-5 loss to like a third or fourth place team. And Hurley surprisingly didn't lose it, eh? He was one of those fucking guys that you never knew what was coming. He just always had you on your toes. And I'm the coach. And I'm eating with this guy, I'm rooming with this guy sometimes. I'm like, you just never knew. When he should be pissed, he's not. When he should be happy, he's not. Just one of those amazing motivators, ball busters like Trump, like Carnegie, like Ford, like Reagan, like Belichick, like Saban, like just the opposite of what you would expect. Just always keeping you on your toes. That's great accountability, coaching, and leadership. So we lose this game, and he comes down during the game. He'd come down between periods, and he was upset between a couple. He's like, Michael, this is a game we got to win. We don't have any energy. Get the guys to have some more energy. And then he'd go back up to his box and his suite and watch the game. So, good morning. So, that was happening during the game. Soon as the game's over, I'm standing outside the locker room. I haven't said anything to the team yet. We've lost 6-5. And Hurley comes down, and we're in the hallway. And the bus is idling at the side there where we're going to load it all up. And he goes, that's 5 minutes. Everybody on the bus. 5 minutes, everybody in the bus, Michael. And I'm like, 5 minutes? I said, the guys haven't even undressed. They haven't showered. 5 minutes on the bus. And he walks out the door. He goes, no showering, no changing, 5 minutes on the bus. He said they can take their helmets and their shoulder pads and gloves off. Their upper body stuff they can take off. He said, everybody on the bus, we pull away in 5 minutes. If you're not on the bus, we're gone. So I'm like, I walk in the room. I'm like, everybody get half undressed, put your stuff in your bags. Let's go. Help the trainers. We're out of here. So here we are, 24 players. Kids are 17 to 21 years old. And we load onto this massive coach. Hurley's on there. The trainers are on there. And here they are. The kids are wearing everything but their skates, helmets, and gloves. They still have their jerseys on. And the stench is unbelievable. 24 players, 20 of them had just played a game. So the sweat and the smell of the equipment. And here they are sitting on the coach. Here they are sitting in these plush seats, and they're fully dressed in their gear. Hurley doesn't give a fuck. So we get on there, 5 minutes. He goes to the bussy. He's like, let's go. Literally had one guy chasing behind the bus. Like, gonna leave him in 6 hours away. Gonna leave him. Like, this guy, if you're not on time, you are gone. And he means it. He didn't give a shit. This is 25, 30 years ago. You try that stuff now, the cupcakes they'd have you kicked out of the sport. But nonetheless, man, oh man, iron fist. So we finally pulls over the bus, and the kid gets on, and everybody's on the bus, and we take off for a 6-hour drive home, 6 hours back. And here they are in their gear. All they've taken off is their helmets and their skates and their gloves. The smell is unbelievable, and not a word. Not a word. Like, Hurley didn't talk to the team very often, but in this case, his energy was all you needed, right? He's paying for all this. He's treating the players like pros. He's treating them like God almighty, like NHL players. He's getting them scholarships. And if you're not going to give championship effort, well, this is what happens. Sick to your stomach. So this whole thing, I'm sick to my stomach just being part of this. I'm sick to my stomach just being around him. I'm sick to my stomach just knowing we drove 6 hours to lose to that team. So we're driving a little bit in the darkness Just visualize the dark Canadian highway. We're driving in 6 hours. We're gonna be home at 3 or 4 in the morning. We leave the rink at 11 p.m. We're gonna be home at 5 a.m. when the sun is starting to come up. So we're just driving in darkness, right? There's no iPads, there's no iPhones, there's no music, there's nothing. No movies, nothing. He's like, nope, no movies, no nothing. No drinks, nothing. So we're driving about half an hour into all the way home, 6 hours. And we hear somebody laugh at the very back. It was somebody cracking a joke or somebody smirking or somebody, whatever. And that's losing, right? That's the person, they're okay with the loss, half an hour. And that's, those are the guys you got to get rid of in your business. Those are the people you got to get rid of in your life, that they're okay with the loss. Half an hour from now, 10 minutes from now, they're okay with it. They'll try to tell you they're sick to their stomach, but they're not. They want to win, but they also can live with losing. They can live with losing. So interesting. He heard this laugh and he says, that's it. No food service. No food service. So Mr. Hurley always treated us so well. We would have Subway, we would have pizza, we would have salads, we would have drinks, we would have sandwiches from a local restaurant. He really treated us well after games. He's like, nope. He goes, put the food away, to the trainer. So literally for 6 hours, we drove into the night, not one more word, no food. All the guys did was have their water bottles for 6 hours, sitting in comfortably, sick to your stomach, until we got back in the city. 6 hours in their equipment, sweaty gear, and all of us on that bus after a 6-5 loss. I'll never forget us unloading that bus at 5 in the morning. He made all the players unload and help with the trainers. They had to carry all the sticks, all the equipment, all the food, everything, and 5 in the morning, right? Sun isn't even up. And that was it. He got in his big SUV and he drove home. Cigar dangling, suit, work boots. Didn't give a speech, didn't talk to anybody, didn't have any meetings, nothing. Just a pure hardcore brass balls message that winning is expected and championship effort is the standard. And if losing continues, this is what you can expect. If you win, you can expect to be treated like a pro. But if you're not going to work hard, it wasn't just about the losing with Hurley. It was about the effort, championship effort, he used to call it. And if you're not going to give championship effort and mental toughness effort and work and, championship work ethic, well, it's going to be a really ugly place to be around. And I've taken those trainings with me to my own hockey teams, to my insurance agency, my barber shop, even my consulting company, my Barclay Cup Perth Blue Wing Championship team. Just taking those standards that I'm going to treat you like a pro. I'm going to treat you guys better than you've ever been treated before. But the expectation is you will always, always do your very best. And of course, without even having to state it, winning is part of the expectation. Getting better is part of the expectation. So it was interesting. We won 11 straight games to finish that season. There was no speech. There was no meeting after the meeting. We won 11 straight games after that season. We went into the playoffs and we lost in the finals to a team that was better than us. And even Hurley, like as much as he was vomiting after that loss, like he said, I can accept a small part of it because we were simply overmatched, but sick to your stomach. And when I hear somebody say sick to their stomach, or I hear somebody laugh about losing, or I hear somebody say, I didn't walk today, or I didn't copyright today, or I got away from date nights, I haven't been doing that, or I stopped drinking for 30 days, but I started again. I want to lose weight, but it's hard. or I'd like to read, but I'm too much of a cell phone junkie. The masterminds are difficult because I'm what the tomato can say the other day, I'm stretched too thin. I'd like to do all these things. I'd like to build my own world, but I can't. I think of Dan Hurley. I think about that 6-hour bus ride in full equipment. I think about the silence is golden on that bus. Not a word after that laugh. Not a word. No food, no videos, no movies, no talking. It was, good morning. It was a thing of beauty. It was a thing of beauty, and it helped me develop as a man, as a young man. I saw what winning looks like. I said to myself, like Marc Andre has shared, playing for me for the Blue Wings, he's as a young man, 17, 18, 19, 20. He's like, man, is this what winning looks like? I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen demands like this. I've never seen expectations like this. I've never seen preparation like this. I've never seen professionalism like this. That's what I lived as a young coach, thanks to Mr. Hurley. That's what I lived. And anything less was not, and I repeat, not tolerated. Get your ass on the bus. I don't give it in 5 minutes and we are fucking gone. That's it. No other words. No other words. And that was a statement. That's a standard that he had that team for, 20 years. And man, oh man, like I said, 5 championship rings on his left hand, 2 championship rings on his right, multi-million-dollar business, suit and tie every day with work boots. Suit and tie every day with work boots, and a bottle of whiskey in his top drawer. Guy, I never knew Dan had a drinking problem because I'd never seen him sober. Man, he was one of those guys who started his day. His first drink was when he was lacing up his work boots. He told me that. He said, Michael, he says, my first drink of the day is when I'm lacing up my work boots. Never saw that man stagger, never saw that man slur a word, never saw that man embarrass himself. Just hard as hard can be. Hard as hard can be. And he would always be, he would have those, we'd be over there on a Sunday and on an off day, and he'd be cooking breakfast or brunch on a Sunday after church. And he'd have his Bloody Marys. And I'm like, I'm good, Dan. And he would be having his Bloody Marys, which then turns into whiskey. And man, oh man, just functioning, right? He's like a Winston Churchill. He's like a functioning alcoholic. And I never knew, because I never, ever knew. The old saying is I never saw him sober. But man, oh man, what a force to be reckoned with, and what a mentor in my life. I took all the good parts, I wrote notes, I put it in my journals, I learned from that guy. And I'm like, I'm like at the end of the season, when I graduated from university, he's like, Michael, you coming back? You coming back? And I was like, I got a job, my first job in pro because of him. My next stop was professional hockey. When I was done my last year at university, which was that spring, I had my first professional job waiting because of Dan Hurley, because of the success we had. I had my first pro job as an assistant coach. So I walk out of university and I have a job being a professional hockey coach. And it was a big part of it was that final year under Dan Hurley. And I was able to coach hockey at the age of 25, where guys in my locker room had played in the NHL. Some of them were older than me, 30, 35. And I was able to command respect in a pro locker room thanks to what I learned from Dan Hurley. That you get what you demand, you get what you're not willing to tolerate, and you are your lowest standards. That's what I learned from Hurley. We're our lowest standards. We're not our highest dreams and aspirations. I want to do this, I want to do that. No way. We're our lowest standards. Show me your lowest standard and I'll show you your life. Show me your friends and I'll show you your life. Show me the books you read and I'll show you your life. Show me, who you hang out with. Show me your mornings. show me your mornings, your half-day discipline, and I'll show you your future. So I have a lot of gratitude for a man like Dan Hurley. Hard nails, just good morning. Just exactly what the doctor ordered when you're like me, 23, 24 years old. And I mean, I always tell people, if I had a son who was playing junior hockey or was an entrepreneur, I would pay $1 million a year to have them around a man like that. I would pay $1 million of my money to have my son be part of a championship program like that for 1 year. There's no college, there's no university, there's no book that can teach that level of excellence. There just isn't. There's no seminar that can teach that level of sick to your stomach winning. There's no level. And I went to school, I was paid to be around that. So I'm so grateful because I actually got paid to be a part of that. I got paid to be the leader. I got paid to learn from a man like that. And man, I walked away 10 years, 20 years more mature. He 10x my mental toughness. He 10x my discipline. He 10x my work ethic. I thought I was working hard. He's like, Michael, you don't work fucking hard. He goes, come out to the mines. Come out to the mines. He goes, we'll go underground 30,000 feet. We'll go under the ground 30,000 feet. He goes, and you'll work a 10-hour shift with no sunlight, pumped in oxygen. And then you'll come up after 10 hours and then you'll do it the next day. And then you'll do it the next day. And then the next day. You'll go down an elevator every day, 30,000 feet. He goes, you don't fucking work hard. He said, you're a goddamn university student. He said, you're a fucking hockey coach. He says, you don't work hard. And I was like, man, the guy's right. And he's like mentally tough. He goes, you have no idea. He goes, I got men here who've been going down in the earth for a mile every day of their life for 40 years to make money for their family, to feed their family. They go down half a mile in the ground or whatever the hell he said. And I was just like, man, this is insane. Good morning. And it was funny too, because one day he used to invite me to do odd things with him too, and they were all teaching points. And I'll share this before I get back. My mom and dad are here and we're heading to the horse barn. My dad loves the barn, and my daughter Emery is leased a horse here for a couple of months, and she's riding. So grandma and grandpa were heading out to the barn here. Hurley says, Michael, you ever been to the Big Nickel? Good morning. It's the Big Nickel mine in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. And I'm living in there coaching hockey, right? So he goes, are you interested in going to the nickel mine? I'm like, okay, I've seen yours. He goes, oh, no. He says, this is the nickel mine that employs 40,000 people in this city. So I'm like, okay, all part of his teaching, right? So I meet him at the nickel mine, which was just outside of the city. The smokestack was built so high that it sent the pollution down to Michigan, and that was the big joke, right? It sent the pollution. It was all black smoke, right? Mining. It was like living on the moon. And I'm like, where the hell does that smoke go? And he's like, Michigan. So the hardcore, eh? So this wasn't his mine. This was the biggest nickel mine in the country. And because of who he was able to get me in there. He says, we're going to go down and see what these guys do for a day. He goes, you don't fucking work hard. He goes, you're soft. And I'm like, okay. So Hurley takes me there. We meet there and we get in this elevator, this massive shaft elevator. And it would probably hold about 40 men, 40 workers, right, on the shift change, 12-hour shifts. This nickel mine is still, the largest in the world, still going strong. And he was like, okay, we're going down in the ground a mile or half a mile. I'm not kidding. I'm probably selling that short. It's probably 2 miles. But anyways, we go down this elevator shaft. It never ended. Just down, like go. And it's just me and him on the, plus the guy that's running the elevator, right? And we get down there and they let us off. And what do we see? We're like, it's a weird feeling. You're in the ground, you're in the core of the earth, half a mile in, a mile down. Like we just went down on an elevator for 10 minutes and we're in the core of the earth. There's no sunshine, there's no light, there's pumped in oxygen, and you have thousands of guys, mostly guys, working in there. And I'm like, man. And here's these guys, and Hurley's giving me the business, right? He goes, these guys work 12 hours a day. He says, you sleep to fucking noon. And he's like, these guys, they're just here they've been working for 40 years. Some of these guys, they work 12 months a year, 12 hours a day, living for the weekends. He said, just incredible stuff. And that feeling, he said, like, and I felt it going down in the earth like that for half a mile or a mile. He said it's the same as going into a maximum security prison and having the door swing behind you, even as a visitor. He said it's that same feeling of just, it's just wow. Like if you were claustrophobic, look out. So we were down there and he showed me all the different things the guys are doing. They're driving backhoes. It's a mine inside the earth. And it was like, wow, you know, there's backhoes, there's drillers, there's everything. And guys are just in there 12 hours a day, and then take the elevator back into reality. Take the elevator back up a mile into the sunshine or the darkness, whatever it was. 12-hour shifts. And I'm like, holy, the Inco mines, the Inco nickel mines in Sudbury. Man, I never forgot that lesson. He said to me, he goes, you think you work hard? He goes, guys put in 40 years, 50 years of their life, a mile underground, you know, feeding their families, supporting their children. He said, never forget how good you have it. And it worked, man. I've never forgot that story. I've never forgot about, you know, world building and coaching and being an entrepreneur. Never forgot about how blessed I am that I don't have to go down in the earth a mile every day, that I don't have to do any of that stuff. How blessed I am. So that's it for today. We're off to the horse barn, which is really awesome. Love the horse barn. So if you don't have a copy of my book, get a copy of my book. The link is below, nobullbook.com. That's nobullbook.com. nobullbook.com. It's a physical book, how to not get your ass kicked in business and in life. Also join my newsletter subscription, my members list at badassletter.com. That's badassletter.com. And my mastermind, you can find information at badassworldbuilders.com. That's it. Gorgeous day here in Southwest Florida. 2 words that changed my life. 2 words that can change yours. Be relentless.